Greetings everyone, and today we're doing not a Let's Play, we're doing something entirely different. Today I'm going to address one of the most heated topics of all time among nerds, as I prepare to go back to teaching class in just a week's time. We're going to discuss Star Wars versus Star Trek in an all-out war between the United Federation of Planets and the Galactic Empire. A lot of this is basing on a paper that I wrote a number of years ago for a physics class, and now I'm going to go ahead and reiterate that. And I know this is going to get a lot of flames, but try to hear me out. First of all the data in this paper is taken from both the Star Wars technical manuals and the Star Trek technical manuals. Now, I actually like both series. I've seen every movie of Star Wars. I've read every Star Wars book. I've seen all the TV shows and every episode. I've also done the same for Star Trek. I've read just about every novel. There are some I haven't gotten to. I've seen all the movies. I've watched all TV series, including Enterprise. I absolutely love the new Star Trek movie, so I'm not really a fan either way. I like both of them. But this was going straight on the actual technical specifications, and this is based on a paper in college that was looked over by Dr. Keith Jenkins, who is was a NASA scientist. So this was actually looked over by a rocket scientist, so I assume he knows his shtick. So let's begin, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to go over the 10-minute mark, which is going to suck because I'm going to have to break this up. There's going to be no pretty graphics on this because it's going to be already pretty long. We're going to start. I'm not going to go into the physical numbers on this, or the physics numbers on this, but you can check it and call me on if you want, but I'm telling you these are actually legitimate. First of all, we're going to look at the energy output of... This was started on an X-Wing versus the Enterprise, was the actual name of the paper. And it starts out with the energy output of an X-Wing's lasers, so that's where we're going to pick up. The energy output of an X-Wing's lasers, and no, the Enterprise couldn't deflect these due to the type of attack laser, is totally irrelevant with the amount of force that's included into it, which means while the Enterprise did deflect lasers suffering absolutely no ill effects, in an episode of Star Trek Next Generation, we can't assume that they had the same energy output as the, quote, lasers that are used in Star Wars. Also, the Star Wars lasers aren't really lasers because they're not really coherent beams of light. They're actually energy supercharging to Banna gas, which means they're kind of like superheated plasma, which has been shown in Star Trek to be highly effective against Star Trek vessels. In any case, the energy output, according to the Star Wars Technical Manual, is sufficient when compared to the amount of damage that the shields can take to literally, and I'm not kidding, shoot clean through the shields of the USS NCC 1701-D Enterprise, travel through the shields, through the hull, through the entire ship, out the other end, and through the shields on the other side in a single shot. I'm not making that up. That's what the numbers claim. Now, you might say, well, that's BS. No ship can be that powerful. Unfortunately, we can't go with that argument. We have to go with what's presented in the material. So, right there, we can say that the weapon capabilities of Star Wars are far superior to anything Star Trek brings to bear. Alternatively, the Star Trek weapons output of both the phasers and photon torpedoes against the technical specifications of the X-Wing shielding, just using the X-Wing, which is a fighter, the Star Trek weapons are insufficient to penetrate the shielding. Literally, meaning the X-Wing could literally sit there stationary while the Enterprise defired every one of its weapons, including its entire complement of torpedoes, and not once will the shields be anywhere near in danger of collapsing. This means that a lone X-Wing, in theory, could destroy the NCC 1701-D with relative ease. The Enterprise, however, would destroy standard TIE fighters because they don't have shielding, though if utilizing a TIE Advance, because we are talking about the Empire here, it would have more or less the same success rate as a lone fighter, and the TIE Advance would destroy the Enterprise in any conceivable one-on-one battle. A large group of Star Trek fans are going to bring up the warp speed, trying to claim that Trek ships have a speed advantage. This is incorrect. The Voyager, as was shown in Star Trek Voyager, needs 79 years to reach the Federation space from the Delta Quadrant, which is 1/4 the size of the galaxy, while the Millennium Falcon has been said to be able to traverse the entire galaxy in a matter of only days. Assuming the error on the side of caution, we can assume an X-Wing can traverse the galaxy in a week. We would mean that the slowest of Star Wars ships are still 8,216 times faster. Since it takes 4,108 weeks for the Voyager to make it through a quadrant, we can assume twice this time frame to cross from one end of the galaxy to the other, assuming a straight line end to end, than the fastest of the Star Trek ships, i.e. the Warp 9 capabilities of the NCC 1701-D. It is possible, if we utilize even the Warp 13 factor of the NCC 1701-E, which was shown in the episode All Good Things, that this is irrelevant due to the fact that still the amount of time would be ridiculous. The Star Trek ships do bring one impressive weapon to bear, however, and that's the Star Wars ships may be vulnerable to, and this is the Star Trek ships have been depicted as being able to utilize weapons at warp speed against non-warp speed targets, which we have no evidence that Star Wars ships are capable of doing. This, however, is almost rendered a moot point because, as previously stated, even the largest and most powerful of the Star Trek Federation vessels are incapable of actually damaging the smallest and weakest Star Wars shielding bearing fighters, let alone a capital ship or even a freighter. Another common argument at Star Trek camp is the ability to use the transporter to, quote, beam weapons capable of bypassing the shields onto a Star Wars ship. This is not likely. According to the Star Trek Technical Manual, in order to transport, there needs to be no interference as transporters are extremely delicate. Even the slightest electromagnetic interference, such as a powerful storm, can stop transporters from functioning. There's multiple sources of evidence on this. The shield on the Star Wars ships do generate this EM field according to their technical specifications and how their science supposedly works, and thus would make transporting difficult, if not impossible. It would be possible if one would gain the frequency to pass through the shields, and this could be brought to bear if the Star Trek ships had time to study the shields before being destroyed in one or two shots. As an X-Wing carries a quartet of the powerful weapons described earlier, and a TIE Defender does the same, this is unlikely that the Star Trek ships would have the time to do so. Judging from examples in Star Trek, however, sensors seem unable to locate the specific shield frequencies of other ships, though. The way they usually will gain this information is by hacking the opposing ship's computer somehow, or by an informant on the inside. Since this debate was more about fighters, and being as there's no computer systems to hack, and by the way, the shields on Star Wars tech shield frequency, according to how they work, would cycle every approximately 2.76 seconds according to the physics, meaning this would be exceedingly hard to accomplish as a viable tactic. So we have eliminated a number of claims of the Star Trek community right there. Their weapons would be incapable of penetrating the shields of a Star Wars ship. The Star Trek ships would be incapable of withstanding even the weakest of the Star Wars weaponry. The Star Trek ships would be unable to use the transporters to bypass Star Wars shielding due to the technical limitations of the Star Trek transporter technology. And Star Wars ships would easily outrun any Star Trek vessel, but we're going to talk more on that in a minute. Well, the Star Trek vessels could fire with impunity on Star Trek ships if they so the Star Trek vessels could fire with impunity on the Star Wars ships if they so desired to. It is possible to remove the Star Wars speed advantage. In Star Wars, an interdictor cruiser, a common Star Wars Imperial ship, is capable of disrupting a ship's ability to enter hyperspace and can be used to pull a Star Wars ship right out of hyperspace as well. Star Trek ships have been shown on many occasions that their ships are capable of generating mass gravity wells unless they could replicate this effect, providing that they realized it was possible. There is, however, a downside to that issue. The technical specifications of generating a warp via bubble that is required for a Star Trek ship to enter warp speeds also requires the non-existence of a strong gravity source such as those generated by a planet. This is highly inconsistent, and in the series has been shown that there have been brilliant technicians such as Geordi LaForge in Star Trek who have figured out how to bypass this apparent weakness, though in all of those cases it is a specific set of circumstances, and this feat seems to be needed to be performed on a case-by-case basis. This is stated because while the Enterprise was once able to enter warp speed to escape a black hole, in one episode, it was, in a later episode, unable to do this. So we cannot consider this a standard tactic, especially since the interdictor cruiser is capable of generating gravity wells of varying strengths. This removes the ability for Star Trek ships to attack Star Wars ships in large fleet combat with impunity, leaving the Federation with very little in the way of viable combat tactics. This argument, it is important to note, is not taking into account the psychic and paranormal capabilities of both the characters of Star Wars and Star Trek. We're also only including the Galactic Empire and the United Federation of Planets, so we're not bringing Q into this equation. Nor are we bringing in Jedi. Some people in Star Trek are capable of psychic phenomenon, such as the Betazoids, while Star Wars also has people who can manage these feats, such as the Jedi. In some of these extreme cases, characters in Star Wars were able to utilize this, quote, mystical energy field to repel an entire fleet of Star Destroyers, see the climax of the Jedi Academy trilogy, and to attempt to utilize the metaphysical capabilities of the characters in both universes becomes moot at best and impossible to determine due to the use of Deus Ex Machina as presented in both universes. Now on to the topic of super weapons that are present in both universes, we have to look at the most common ones. This would be one of the 3 Death Stars against the Genesis torpedo. Both Star Wars and Star Trek possess the capability to destroy all life on a planet. The Star Trek universe has an advantage in the worlds that are struck by the Genesis torpedo can still sustain life, meaning that they're not wiping out the planet entirely. And in fact, these planets are teeming with life, meaning they could colonize them, which is something that Star Wars is incapable of, following being struck by Genesis torpedo. However, the Star Wars equivalent is, of course, the Death Star super laser, which is capable of destroying In total, a planet, leaving behind only a floating asteroid field. I'm going to go ahead and have to stop this right there because I'm at 9 minutes and 40 seconds of this recording. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then I'll put the second part up, and they'll be following concurrently. Alright, I'll see you back in just a minute.